Okay, so that brings us to part 2 of pregnancy 1, Johnny's birthday, which ironically is in a few days. So it's really exciting that I get to reminisce about this leading up to my baby boy's birth and his birthday. So October 9th, we wake up. I barely slept, and the funny part is I always joke, and I'm going to tell Johnny this for basically the rest of his life, that he showed up late to his own birth. Funny part, Jonathan somehow, even though we just got out of the car the night before, misplaces the car keys and cannot find them anywhere. And we are running late to my own scheduled C-section. Like, it was just so funny. He was running around the house, like, going crazy. I started to stress out because now I'm worried more about being late to get this started. And, you know, it was just kind of funny. So I'm like, Johnny, you were late to your own birthday, but that's fine. So we get there, we kind of get checked in, everything goes pretty quick. They start pumping me full of fluids, as they do before you start, you know, any surgery really. And they started talking to me about this, the block, you know, the spinal, and so what that's gonna feel like and whatnot. And I was like, okay, like, so they wheel me in. Jonathan has to wait in the room until all the numbing is done and all the injection, and I'm back on the table, and then they allow him to come in and sit by my side. So it was a little traumatic. Like, I was getting really nervous because I've never even had an operation of any capacity, and now I'm like, hey, you're gonna cut up my stomach and take a human out. Like, this is gonna be a little crazy. So I was like, okay, just breathe. Unfortunately, I didn't have a meditation practice at the time. I wish I did, because, man, it would have really helped me, like, get through some of those last few weeks of pregnancy and into this phase. But so I was like, okay, just breathe. You're going to be fine. Getting the spinal really kind of stunk because they could not, like, find the right channel on one of either side of my spine. And he's like, so if you feel a pinch, I'm in the wrong spot. So tell me when you don't feel a pinch. And I'm like, okay, well, I feel a pinch. And then he's like, okay, try this side. Oh, all right, I feel a pinch. Okay, try this side. I feel a pinch. And I'm like, dude, just poke me and let's go. So anyway, he finally gets the spinal block in. He says in a few minutes, you're going to start to basically not feel anything. Your legs are going to get super heavy and numb. And I'm like, okay, like, kind of scary. They lay me on the table. And everything from, you know, your breast line down is completely numb. It's like you don't have a body. You're like disembodied. And it's even more weird to look at it because your brain sees like legs, but your body can't feel them. And it's such a trip. Like, it's just really weird. So anyway, the one thing that I didn't like, and I'm not sure if any of you mommies have had this experience in your C-section, but it was really startling to me. They strap your arms down to the table like this, and it was a little scary. Like, I know with one arm, because like all the ports are in there and the blood pressure cuff and all that stuff to monitor me, but both arms are strapped down, and I was like, dude, I feel helpless right now. I feel like totally out of control. It was just starting to up my anxiety, and I started to feel really nauseous. And it could have been like some of the medicine, because they kind of like put you, like, I'm not out, I was awake, but you know, they kind of like give you little stuff to make you feel a little like loose and like cool and calm. But I started to want to throw up, and the nurse comes over like, are you gonna throw up? And I'm like, no, I think I'm fine. Like, I just feel super nauseous. So they gave me more medicine in the port that was like gonna help me, and I was like, all right, we're good. Then Jonathan came in and we're like, okay, it's go time. So I stopped really thinking about myself once he got in there, because I knew like, hey, now it's just time to focus on seeing this baby. This is going to happen. Here we are. So, you know, the one thing I do say is don't look up at the reflection of the operating lights, because it's a little scary. I'm going to admit. I took a quick peek and I was like, no, I'm done. So I just turned over and I looked at Jonathan the whole time. And the cool part was, I always remember this story, and I tell Johnny too. They asked me, like, do I want to listen to music? And I was like, okay. So I said, yeah, play some reggae, because reggae always makes me feel like calm if I'm stressed and like trying to cook. I always like to like cook with reggae on and stuff. So it was really cool. They put on Pandora. It was Bob Marley's station, and Is This Love comes on, and I love, love, love that song. And it has a lot of meaning throughout my life for like different movies, and a connection to my sister, and now to Johnny, obviously. So that was the song that was playing when he entered the world, and I think it's just really sweet and really touching. And we're not sure if he was conceived in Jamaica, so that could have a little connection there too. So there he was, and all of a sudden, little baby Johnny just came up over the curtain, and I was like, "We got a cute one!" Like, I can't believe I even said that, but I did. I think it was just the medication and feeling a little out of it, and like maybe the blood loss or whatever. But everybody laughed in the room, but he really was adorable from the second he left the womb. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. And he had such a deep cry. He was like, rah! And it was just really funny because we heard him over on the side, and they were cleaning him up and weighing him and getting him going. And then they wrapped him up. They put him right on my chest. It was really sweet. It was a great moment. And I really didn't remember like any of the procedure because I was just like thinking about this baby. And I'm like, oh my God, we're parents. He's here. It's happening. It was adorable. And so the recovery was pretty good, obviously extremely painful. You know, the nurse unfortunately didn't come in the middle of the night to give me medication after the first night, and my pain started to ride like up and increase, and it was like really scary. And please just stay on top of your own medication, or have your partner help time the medication and set an alarm to wake you up, because no matter how tired you are, you don't want to feel that level of pain. I tried to stand up to go to the bathroom in the morning, and I just stood frozen and sobbed. And thankfully the nurse was like coming right in. She's like, oh my God, let me help you. Definitely weak, lots of blood loss, but obviously happy to be with Johnny. Thank God he was so healthy. Everything was really great. The only thing that was like a little scary was he started choking on his own fluid. And so I called the nurse in, and she said because of the C-section, typically when they're vaginally delivered, like their chest and their lungs kind of get pushed and compressed to get out any fluid from, you know, being in the womb. And they did suction him out, but maybe there was some left that he was choking on. So they had to bring him back and do this procedure where they did have to suction it. We weren't allowed to go in, and I barely moved. I couldn't move, so I couldn't go. But it did help, like, remove any extra fluid, and he was totally fine. He latched pretty easily. It was very fortunate. There was a moment where I feel like we weren't really jiving on the breastfeeding game, and a consultant did come in, and I swear I was getting stressed because, like, he started missing, like, a feeding, and I'm like, oh my God, already? It's only been, like, day 2 or day 3. So the lactation consultant came in and just taught me like 1 or 2 tweaks to kind of like position him properly. And once he latched, I swear I sobbed. I was like, oh my God, thank you. He's eating. Like, but he put on weight. Everything was wonderful with him. So we're super happy. Like, we're extremely fortunate, extremely blessed. But what did happen with me, unfortunately, and this is sort of, like I said, a lot of my trauma and my bodily issues, or my concerns, my anxiety has stemmed from childbirth and pregnancies. So postpartum, I started swelling really bad. And the nurses and doctors were telling me it was just regular postpartum swelling and that it should go down. But the thing is, we stayed in the hospital like 4 days. I even elected another day because the swelling wasn't going down. As a matter of fact, I think it was getting worse. And I was like, I am in so much pain. Like, not just C-section pain, like my body, my legs, my feet, or like my ankles were getting so swollen. They kept saying it'll be fine. It'll subside, it'll go down. I was like, okay, I'm trusting, you know, you guys know what you're talking about. I've obviously never had this experience, so I didn't have anything to base it off of, and none of the women in my family had this experience. So I really just didn't have any frame of reference to say this isn't right. Lesson learned, and I'm going to talk about that like week 4. All my lessons learned, I'm going to compile them, but I'll tell you right now, go with your gut every single time. Never second guess yourself. Stand your ground and advocate for yourself, or have your partner advocate for you if you're not feeling confident enough. However, they did discharge me, and I was like, okay, here we go into the wild world of being a parent of a newborn. And honestly, things with Johnny were going really well. I mean, yes, it's the sleeplessness, the exhaustion, of course. But what was really startling for me is the fact that I kept swelling worse and worse and worse. And it was pulling up into my body, like up my legs, into my butt. It got to the point where I couldn't even recline in a chair, because if I reclined or laid down to go to sleep, the fluid would almost like choke me. It would like come up into my lungs or something. It was scary as heck, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It got to a pinnacle point where it was like day 2 at home. And in the middle, like 2 a.m., I woke up and I said, Jonathan, I think I'm going to die. I am so scared. And I'm not an alarmist. I'm very chill. I don't like panic easily. I'm not a hypochondriac. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to die. So I called the doctor's office, and I was like, what should I do? Here I'm like, I'm terrified to go to an emergency room because I have a newborn who's only days old. And I'm like, I don't want him to get sick. What are they going to do? I'm breastfeeding him. I need to feed him. So how can I have issues and still feed this baby? So I was so nervous, and I was reluctant to go to the emergency room. But I'm also like, what the hell is going on with me? So, unfortunately, she just basically said, well, it could be normal post-op swelling. I'm like, yeah, I've been hearing that for about a week now, almost a week, and I don't buy that. And she's like, well, if you feel that badly, go to the emergency room. But I was, again, like I said, I was terrified to go. I was reluctant to try to go because of having Johnny and this newborn, and trying to walk into a hospital full of germs and whatever. And I literally called my mother and father at 4 a.m. They will tell you. And they came and sat by my side downstairs in the living room while I sat in a chair, worried about something bad happening to me. And they basically sat there until my appointment. I did have a doctor's appointment, a post-op doctor's appointment in the office the next morning. So they're like, well, if you can get to the appointment, they can assess you and we'll go from there. So we get there. The very first thing that they do in any appointment, as you all know, is take your blood pressure. And so they took my blood pressure, and they took it again. And they took it again. And they took it again. And it was sky high. And basically the doctor was like, you're going straight to the emergency room. And I lost my shit. I started sobbing because I'm like, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong with me. This is not normal. If it's normal post-op swelling, it should be going down. It should not be going up. So I freaked out. We drove straight to the emergency room. They took me in. They put Johnny on my chest because, like a lot of people might know, or maybe you don't know, infants and mothers, they have this connectivity, and it can help regulate each other's body temperature and anxiety and blood pressure. So they threw him on my chest. They took me off of the pain medication that I was on, which was just high doses of Motrin. And they monitored my blood pressure, and it started to come down over I think I spent 2-3 hours there in one afternoon. They said it was medication-induced high blood pressure, which after speaking to a bunch of people, I don't think that exists, or if it does, I don't think that's what I had. I think it was post-eclampsia, which is extremely dangerous and fatal if you wind up having a stroke. So do not ignore. I might have been very blessed to have gotten through what I went through fairly smoothly. So I sat there with Johnny on my chest, and I swear it was Johnny who did it. Because nothing else happened. They didn't administer anything to me. They basically just gave me my son, and my blood pressure went down for, over 2 hours, 3 hours. And they were able to discharge me that night. What they did do to start to get rid of some of this, the swelling was so bad, I wanted to poke my feet with a pin and just let it come out like a water balloon. The nurse looked at my feet and was like, oh, honey. And I'm like, it's not just my feet. I can't feel myself. I'm so swollen. I can't feel my butt. I can't feel my legs. I was numb. It was the layer of fluid outside of my, under my skin that just inhibited me from being able to feel. So I was terrified. So what they did do was they gave me a water pill. One water pill. That's all it took. And they sent me home. They said, by the way, you're going to start peeing like crazy. And I was like, well, bring it on, because I want this fluid out. And so I went home, and my best friend, who's a massage therapist, came to the house, and she massaged my feet and legs, and she pushed all that fluid up. And it started coming out like this, and it was over. And I've never had any blood pressure issues prior or since, but that moment was extremely scary. So don't ever ignore your body and its signals, because it is telling you something. It is telling you something. So anyway, that concludes the pregnancy and birth story of Mr. Johnny. We were extremely blessed and fortunate to have such a relatively smooth process, and such an amazing guy. He is the light of our life, truly. And I'm just so fortunate to have him in my life. He's blessed us in ways he doesn't even know. So before I get all teary and get all upset, because now I'm getting weepy thinking about it, and his birthday is coming up, and I'm just going to be a mom mush, I'll let you go. But that concludes story number 1. Stay tuned next week, and I'm going to talk about pregnancy number 2, which did result in a miscarriage. But I will walk you through that, and brace yourself, get some tissues, grab your tea, and stay comfy, because that's kind of a crazy story. But I'm here, and I'm here to share it with you in hopes that it will help you in some way. So I love you all. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.